Hello everyone, welcome to the South Coast Reptiles YouTube channel, and today's episode we're going to talk about your very first day as leopard gecko keeper, from going to the reptile store to pick your leopard gecko up to what you need to do when you get home with them. So on the day you're going to collect your leopard gecko, you should already have your setup all complete, your enclosure ready for them, all the temperatures correct. Now obviously we have got a care guide on the channel explaining how to take care of them and how to set up your enclosures for them, so if you want to know about how to do that, you can go watch that video. Obviously, now you've got your setup complete and all ready for them, you go to your reptile store or to a breeder you know. But if this is your first leopard gecko, which I'd imagine be for most people watching this video, you're most likely going to go to your local reptile store to go pick them up. So, there you go, another wonder. Obviously, you go to your local reptile store and you go to pick them up. Obviously, they'll go to your store, you say, oh, I want a leopard gecko. You may have already put a deposit down for your leopard gecko, you may have already decided on your leopard gecko. But obviously, when you leave your reptile store, most people buy a leopard gecko as a baby. So obviously Lizzie here is not a baby, but usually get him as a baby. For a baby, obviously, you go to the reptile store, they'll put you through, obviously, you pick your leopard gecko. And normally what a leopard reptile store would do for you is, they will normally, because leopard geckos are quite small babies, they'll take one of their feeder tubs that you normally get your locusts, your dubia roaches, crickets, all that kind of thing off. Obviously, they'll empty it out, put a bit of paper towel at the bottom, and they'll use that to transport your leopard gecko from the reptile store to home. On the journey to your home, there's not really a lot you need to do. Obviously, I do advise you have two people when you do this. Obviously, one person would be driving the vehicle and the other person obviously would be there just keeping hold of the leopard gecko to make sure it doesn't roll around, doesn't drop. Like, you don't know, you might go around the corner and the person you're driving behind might do an emergency stop for something. You don't want your leopard gecko flying around the car doing tumble wheels because you've broke hard. So it's just best to have the second person in the car, be it family member, friend, just to hold on to them, just to keep them nice and secure on your journey on the way home. But then when you get home, just put this away really quick, I'm not fiddling with it so much. Once you get home, obviously you bring your leopard gecko into your reptile room or wherever you're in, the lounge, living room, wherever your enclosure is. Then normally what you advise to do is when you bring them in, you would turn the lights off. And you'd leave the lights off normally for 24 hours once they're inside of the enclosure, just to allow them to adjust to their new environment. And the key point here is to not disturb them. Don't try to handle them, don't try to feed them, just let them settle into their new environment. Because obviously they're quite nervous animals, so just let them settle in. They'll be perfectly fine for a day without the lights on. Obviously have the heating on if it's that time of day, but have the lights off, all fine and that. Then in the next day, after like 24 hours or so maybe the day or the next day after that, depending on how the time goes, obviously you put your lights on, you start your 12-hour lights on, 12 hours lights off frequency. For example, for me, I get up for work about 6 o'clock in the morning, so I put my reptiles lights on at 6 o'clock, I get home, then obviously at 6 o'clock at night, I turn them off again, then that's a 12 hours on, 12 hours on. Once you start the lights on, lights off cycle, then you can start thinking about how you're going to feed your leopard gecko for the first time. Obviously, if it's a baby leopard gecko, you feed your leopard gecko every day, several appropriately sized feeder insects, anything from small dubia roaches, small locusts, small mealworms, small crickets. And obviously, as they get older and bigger, obviously, if you've just gone and got yourself an adult leopard gecko, general rule of thumb is, as long as the width of the insect isn't wider than the gap in between their eyes, they'll be able to eat them perfectly fine. They should be perfectly good. Obviously, for an adult leopard gecko, you're looking at feeding them every 2 to 3 days. So that would be your feeding schedule going forward into keeping the leopard gecko while you have them. Well, that'll be everything in this video from South Coast Reptiles. Thank you very much for watching. If this has been informative and helpful to you, we would appreciate a like on this video. It helps the channel out a lot. And also don't forget to press the little subscribe button if you want to see future videos like this into the future. But that's all from us today. Goodbye and good night.